It's off again. Oh, there it is. Good morning. My name is Mary-Jeanine Ibarguen, and you are joining me for tips, tools, and techniques here in the Maitland store at the sewing studio. And thank you so much for joining me. I have lots of fun projects to tell you about, and I hope you can stay to the end because that is when I'm going to sew a bag, a crossbody bag, completely live online here. So I think it's going to take 5 or 6 minutes once I stop talking to make this bag. So I hope you can join us to the end. If not, you can always watch it later on YouTube or on Facebook. So thank you for all the people joining me. DeBerry in South Carolina and Washington, Lake Nona, Port Orange. Barbara, hi Barbara, is in Orlando, South Orlando and East Orlando. And Judy Burt's got her coffee and her cereal, so she's ready to go. So thanks for joining us, everyone. I think I have 3 announcements. The first one is we have a shop hop to tell you about that starts, I want to say July 15th, and it goes to July 30th, so 15 days to hit 10 stores in the Central Florida area. And if you get a stamp on all 10 stores, if you visit all 10 stores, fill out your name and turn this into the last store, and you will be put in for a $75 gift cards. And then the second place is 10 $50 gift cards. So 10 winners for the grand prize and 10 winners for the second prize. These passports are $7 right now, and I believe they're $8 during the shop hop. So get them now, save yourself a buck. And Gabrielle is going to put up a picture, or did you already do that? Oh, she's going to put up a picture of our quilt. What's going to happen is as you visit the shops, not only do they have good sales going on, but you will get fabric and a pattern for a single block. And here it is, the picture of all 10 blocks. This is our quilt. Every time you visit a store, you're probably going to see different quilts hanging, but there, if you count them, there's 10 blocks, and then there's some nice filler blocks to make a beautiful quilt. So you, at each store, you will get blocks and fabric to make one of those, pattern and fabric to make one of those blocks. And then it's up to you to finish it. So that's the shop hop starting. It's called July Fling Shop Hop, and it starts on July 15th. So that's the shop hop information. The other 2 announcements are we've got a discount this weekend for everything you purchase online or in the store. If you hear what I'm talking about and then you want to come into the store and purchase things, you could still tell the cashier TTT for the discount code, and you'll get 15% off all the regularly priced things. So as I talk about a lot of these various products, if you don't have them and it sounds good to you, add it to the list or put it in your cart, and then the discount code at the end of checking out is TTT, and that's good until tomorrow night at midnight. And then the final announcement is we've got a handout for this Crazy Easy Crossbody Bag, and Gabriella will put the link for the handout in the comments so you can cut and paste. And hi, Joan. Yes, I meant to tell you the other night that I was doing this, so you got to watch this. Anyway, so where was I? Yeah, so handout. So print out your handout if you haven't printed it out, or if you don't have a printer, put it up on another device so you can follow along. So you've got people from the villages and Satellite Beach, all kinds of great places. I think those are my 3 announcements. So let us get started. I want to talk about this beautiful duffel bag that I made a few weeks ago. And well, it took me longer than it. Yeah, this bag plus this bag took me, I'll talk more about the second bag in a minute, but it took me about 20 hours to make both bags. Part of that time was the cutting and the quilting of all the fabric. But if you are familiar with byAnnie, you know that she writes some of the best patterns out there. I am not exaggerating. I've made 4 or 5 of her patterns, and every single one is amazingly well written, but it is very detailed. And if you make it the way she tells you to, you will come out with a beautiful product, but it does take time. And so I just decided, okay, put aside all my quilts, let's work on these bags. The other thing is when I was making this bag, I knew that it was going to take me a while. So I thought, I'm going to make a second bag in parallel. This bag is probably going to hang at the store for a little while. And so I want actually a bag for my travels this summer. So I made a second bag and it looks like this. And I challenged myself to use as much of my own fabric, stabilizer, everything that I could. So really the only thing I ended up purchasing for this bag is the hardware, which is these little guys here. You've got the clip and you've got a nice little triangle thing. And then the little, this little handle, I don't know what you call it, but I guess it's a slide. So it slides, it allows you to make this bigger or smaller. So and the webbing, I had to buy the interior webbing and I'll talk about that in a minute. This is what it looks like. And we'll talk about that in a moment. And everything else is out of my stash. So if you call the store and say, I want that green fabric, that light green fabric that Mary-Jeanine talked about, these are really old 5-inch squares. And guess what? It took 2 packs of 5-inch squares to make this bag. And if you've been with me for a while, you've heard me say, if you see a 5-inch pack of squares, it's usually 42 squares. You're like, oh, I like this. I'm going to buy one. Yeah. Buying one isn't really going to do much. You need to buy at least 2, at least. And then if you're going to make a quilt, you're going to have to throw in some background fabric to make it big enough. So this was made with 2 packs of 5-inch squares, plus a little bit of yardage. Again, leftover scraps from my stash. And the only thing I actually purchased was the webbing and the hardware. So that was kind of fun. The other thing you may notice, I'm going to put them side by side a little better, is this bag keeps its shape much better, and this one does not. Soft and Stable is what I used here. I wanted to see what would happen if I did not use Soft and Stable. So I used a fusible fleece plus a medium weight interfacing. So as you can see, it doesn't stay up as well, but it works just fine. Amy asked, what's my favorite batting? I need to put it in my cart. My favorite batting, I've got it right here actually, because I've got to take more home, is Dream Cotton, 100% pure cotton batting, and it is the Select. And I'm pretty sure it's in my favorites page. And if you were to look at the really close up, it would say mid-loft. It's not the thinnest loft. The thinnest loft is called Request. And I often tell people, Request is very nice, but it's so thin that if you're working on a large quilt, sometimes all the times where your hands are, let's say you pick up your batting and you lay it down, you've just stretched those 2 areas where your hand was because it's a little too thin. So if you're working with small projects, the Request thickness, whatever, is fine. But for most of my projects, I'm working on, medium to large quilts. And so I like the Select. It's a few dollars more, but that's because it's thicker. So you're getting more product for your money. And of course, it comes in white or natural. We also have lots of Quilter's Dream poly, and we have an 80-20 and we have a 70-30. Haven't really tried them that much. I imagine they're pretty darn good. I just kind of stick with what I know, which is this one. So it's not heavy, it's not too thick. The best thing about Dream Cotton, however, is that when you pull it out of the package and you smooth it out, there's no wrinkles. And that to me is huge, because back in the day when I was pulling batting out of packages, you would have to let it breathe, you would have to let it rest overnight, fluff overnight, and then sometimes there was still wrinkles and you had to wet it down and put it in the dryer to get the wrinkles out or steam it. You could spend an hour trying to get wrinkles out of your batting. This one, it's a few dollars more, but you're ready to go. You take it out of the package and you use it. So to me, that's worth something. All right, thanks for the question. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that if you didn't want to use a Soft and Stable, if you wanted to use what was in your stash, I used a fusible fleece and a medium weight interfacing. And again, it doesn't hold up beautifully like this one, but it still holds everything I want to hold. The plant one looks larger. It's not. They're exactly the same size. You see the edge. And by the way, there are tons of pockets. There's one of those on either side. This one has not only a pocket, but it also has a trolley pocket. So if you're going around with in the airport and you want to put a bag on top of a bag, that's what that's for. On the other side, not only do I have a center pocket, but then, and I've got a thread here that needs to get cut. I will do that later. And then it's got 2 zipper pockets here. Inside, it's got 1 big pocket, but then when you sew everything together, it turns into 3 pockets. And then finally, I got this question on Monday with the face-to-face, what's in the bottom? This is actually a piece of clear plastic. It's hard to see, but this came from the byAnnie. She's got a whole line of accessories that go with, and so this is the one that goes for the duffel. So we have those in stock, and then you make a nice little cover for it. So you kind of like turn it into like a pillow for your bed, kind of put that in. That way, if you need to wash the outside, it's easy to take off and put in. So I will put that back. Actually, I'm gonna leave that out for now. Yeah, any other questions about the duffel? I'm gonna leave it here because I've got a few demos. I'm not gonna, of course, show you how to make the whole bag because that would take hours, but I have some demos for pieces and parts of it. And those are gonna help you no matter what you, hopefully they will help you no matter what you make. So without further ado, hi Krista, yes, this is gorgeous Kaffe Fassett fabric. I went through all his fabric. Okay, what's a nice big print that would look good on a bag? And once I found that, I was like, I better hide that bolt for a few days until I'm ready to buy. The interior is grunge, and then the purple is also a Kaffe Fassett fabric that kind of goes well with that. I was noticing, yeah, I probably should sew that down some more because I got that little funky little thing going on there, but everything else is well finished. For some reason, they don't have you really do much to the zipper, but I feel like I need to put some tape down there or something. Okay, so we're going to zoom in a little tighter here. What I want to talk about now is this Bodkin. Some of you may have it. Maybe you don't even know why you have it. Maybe the last time I talked about it, like, oh, I should get one of those, and then you forgot why you had it. So there is another tool that I like to talk about called Fast Turn for turning things right side out. But when I want to put in a nice thick piece of webbing, then this is what I use. And by the way, we sell 2 different kinds of webbing. This is nylon, but it's kind of hard. So if I were to make a tote bag without covering the webbing, I would buy the cotton webbing. And we have all kinds of colors and all kinds of sizes in cotton. But if I know I'm going to cover it, then I would buy the nylon because it's stronger and cheaper. So the first thing we've got to do, and the byAnnie pattern tells you, you're going to take a piece of fabric and you're going to cut it. I believe it's 3 3/4, and then right sides together. And then I'm going to sew a line. That line is eventually going to be inside my webbing on the wrong side. I don't put the seam on the edge. I put it in the center in the back. Okay, so the first thing we got to do is turn this right side out. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking my bodkin and I'm putting the head in there, and then I'm going to squeeze. Oh, and I should just say the way this works is it grabs something, and then you have this little piece of metal that gets pushed up, and then it's going to hold it nice and tight. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put this down in here, and then I'm going to grab the end nice and tight, and pull up that washer. And now I could just run my fabric down, and there's the end. And then this gets flipped over, a little fiddly. You got to have fingernails, which I barely do. And there we go. Okay, so anytime you need to turn something right side out, a bodkin would be a good way to go. Okay, now I've got to get this webbing in there. So again, I'm going to grasp the webbing with the teeth, and I'm going to run that down. So I'm pulling really hard. It can't come out. Okay. And now that goes back in. I probably should have pressed that. If I had an iron here, I would press that nice and flat, but let's pretend I did. And this goes in here and get it started. And again, I'm going to push all the fabric down. Of course, the ones I made were a lot longer, but it works the same way. And this pulls down, and there we go. Couldn't be easier. I wet my fingers and run this down to the side or the center. And then now I have my webbing filled case. So that's just a short little sample, but the long ones do this exact same way. So that's called a bodkin. And this is what it looks like in the package. And we've got some of those on my favorites page. So grab yourself one. They're just a few bucks and so worth it just to have in your tools of sewing. It's nice to have that. Okay, so I better put this back on, close it before I lose it. And onward bound. Another thing I wanted to talk about were bias tape makers. Okay, Regina says, is the trolley pocket part of the pattern? Yes, it is. I didn't put it on my personal one because I didn't think I would need it, but yes, the trolley pocket where you put the you put your handle of your bottom suitcase, it is part of the pattern. But I put it on this one, but I didn't put it on the one that I'm using. And I actually did use this week. I had a gig down in Port Charlotte. Maybe some of those people are watching today, and that was all my clothes, and it worked great. All the pockets I loved. Yes, ABS. Could you use vinyl to make? Oh, yes, of course you could. You better have a machine that can sew through multiple layers. I will tell you that there were points where I was going through 13 to 15 layers. You know, maybe one of these. Maybe a spot, whoops, there goes my other one. A spot like this where you're going through all kinds of layers, and my machine struggled a little bit. So you have to know that you've got a Juki or a machine that can go through lots of layers. So good question. And then Terry, she joined late. Which pattern did you use? Yes, Terry, I used the byAnnie Travel Duffle Bag 2 by byAnnie. And as I said at the beginning, she writes amazing patterns. Every single thing I've made has come out perfectly. You just have to take your time, be patient, and go through it step by step. Another nice thing, which I didn't mention, if you've never used one of her patterns, is she has a lot of videos. So sometimes in the pattern itself is a coupon for a free pattern, or a free video. But then also you just log in, you download the videos you need, and they're free, and then you watch them, and it helps you. There was at one point where I was confused about something. I read it 4 times, like I still don't get it. So I watched the video. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Sometimes you just got to have the video. So thank you for asking. We're going to continue on. Yes, Tara, the Bodkin is way better than the safety pin. The safety pin sometimes puts holes in things, for sure. All right, so keep asking questions. You know I love questions. And I'm going to talk about a bias tape maker. My daughter is a sewist, and she was over the other night talking about how much bias tape she was making for a project. And I said, so do you have which bias tape makers you? Oh, I don't know anything about that. So I got to teach her about bias tape makers, and she was like, this is a life changer. So, and you know, maybe you don't make bias tape very often, but for what do I use it for? I'm going to use a very narrow one. See how narrow that is. So it's going to come out, well, I wrote it. I used a Sharpie. So this is 1/4 inch. It's going to come out. The finished piece is going to be 1/4 inch. And I like to label all of mine because it talks about millimeters. I don't know. So this one comes out 3/4 of an inch. And this one comes out 1/2 inch. And then this one that I'm talking about today is going to come out 1 inch. It's in there somewhere. There it is. So yes, and I think it's in the packaging somewhere. So by the way, when you want to go to make your bias tape, and by the way, why would I want bias tape? A lot of times I will use it for if I am appliquing some leaves onto a vine. This makes a great vine for the really skinny one. I think it makes them even skinnier than that. For this particular project, I used it for the zipper pulls. So you made one long piece of bias, and then you sewed it down once, and then you cut it into 4 pieces. And that's how I made the zipper pulls. Of course, you don't have to make zipper pulls, but of course they're fun, and you can add fun things to it. So let's talk about this bias tape maker. And by the way, there's 2 kinds. I think all the same. I've got all the same ones here, but sometimes you see them and they don't have this little hole. This little hole is to run tape through, fusible webbing tape. So if you're laying down something that you're appliquing, like if you were to do Celtic knot applique, you would your tape would come out the bottom, and then at the same time, sorry, your bias tape fabric would come out, but then at the same time you'd be laying down the paperback fusible tape at the same time. So then you could turn the whole piece over and applique it down. So I have done that once in a while when Celtic knot applique was real popular for a while. Okay, so here we go. I don't think I said this. This is 1 inch. I'm going to cut a 2-inch bias strip. I'm not sure if it has to be on the bias, but most of the time, no, it doesn't. But if I'm doing curved applique, of course, you definitely want it on the bias. So I am running this through this big side here. And sometimes you have to take a little straight pin to pull it through. And I'm just going to grab a straight pin here. Don't go anywhere. And you see where it's coming through. So I'm going to use a straight pin to kind of pull it through, make it easier for myself. Oh, it helps when you're working on the flat and not in the air. So bear with me. It's not usually this hard. So I'm using the pin to kind of pull things through. Okay, so we pulled it through. And normally what I will do is, are we able to get to the table here? Okay, so normally what I will do is I've got my iron here and I'm pulling with my left hand, and my iron is ironing as it gets pulled out. So I just a few inches at a time, and you're pressing down. And if you were to press, it would look something like that. And if you needed to fold it over at some point, you could do that, which is what I did for the zipper pull. But that's how it works. It's a beautiful thing. It creates perfect bias binding or bias tape, whatever. What is it? Bias tape maker. Anyway, lots of different uses. I'm sure you guys could come up with more uses for that. But, you know, this is a gingham that I used as a leftover that I used for the binding on the quilt behind me. And I did not use this, of course. I'd make binding a different way. But sometimes this is a really nice thing to have. So I just wanted you to know it was out there and how to use it. Bias tape maker. The packaging looks like this. Each color is a different size. So this yellow happens to be the 1/2 inch size. And if you bought pink, it would be 3/4 and so forth. We do have 1 or 2 packages left of bias tape maker. There's 4 sizes in one package, and it's like $17. And so I don't know if that's on my favorite page or not, but if you decided I just want to go all out, I want to get one of everything, that's probably what you should get. Also for window panes on quilt projects. Are you talking about the bias tape? Is that what you use? Okay, because we haven't talked about clear vinyl, so I'm guessing that's what you're asking. Okay, and then there was High from Ocala. Made a few Annie bags. They're a lot of work, but have a professional finish. Especially nice when it's a gift. You are absolutely right. There's no funky looking things except maybe the inside of my zipper, but that's me. That's on me because I probably didn't sew it down exactly right. But yes, very professional, beautiful, beautiful work. I love the byAnnie bags. I just have to know that when I'm getting started, it's not a small project. I have to go all in on it. And I don't want to scare you. I'm just telling you that's something you have to know about with byAnnie. They're really good. Can't wait till the Wednesday class log cabin. Hi, Jeanette. Yes. Can't wait to see you either. All right. What else? Oh, and I wanted to mention one of the, so on byAnnie, she lists everything you need, of course, on the back. And then she lists some optional little things that you might want to have. And so that's kind of what I'm talking about today, is some of the optional things. And one of them is a marker. And there's, of course, tons of chalk markers out there, but this happens to be my personal favorite. It's called the Chakoner. Years and years and years ago, I found it at a quilt show. They were importing them from Japan, and I came in all excited to Mark, and I said, Mark, you've got to order these. And he's been ordering them ever since. It's been great. I don't even know if they come from a regular wholesaler, but we love to have them. It's not cheap. It's $16, but it'll be the last one you use. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see pink on pink. There's a little chalk. You might even be able to hear it. There's a little chalk a little wheel at the bottom, and it puts down a very, you get to see all the spots in my hands. It puts down a very strong pink line. You see those pink lines? So, and then of course they rub out, and it comes in 4 colors, but I happen to have the, oh, this is the blue one. So the packaging is the color of the ink, of the chalk. So it comes in blue, yellow, pink, and white. And those are on my favorites page. So if you don't have a chalk marker, you might want to consider it. The only thing this does not do is little circles, because it runs in a straight line. So if you're marking straight lines, which is what I was doing for the bag, this is great. If you're doing circles, you would use some other thing. Just wanted to throw that out there. And then finally, Soft&Stable. If you're not familiar with that product, this is just a cutoff piece from quilting, the quilt. Soft&Stable is kind of like a foam. You can buy it. This does not have any fusible, but you can buy it with a single side of fusible or double side fusible. But for this particular project, I didn't use fusible. I just laid my 2 fabrics down, maybe sprayed it a little bit with spray, which I'll be talking about a little bit more in a minute. And then quilted through it with my walking foot. And actually there's a little piece of quilting left over from the project. It quilts like butter. So if you're worried about all this going under your sewing machine, don't be. It sews beautifully. And also I really like it because it's not only soft, but it's stable. In other words, well, it's stable. The bag is gonna hold up beautifully. It's stable, but also it's stable in that it's not like batting. If you were to do a quilt as you go project where you sew fabric on the top of your quilt, of your batting, and then flip it over and sew another piece and flip it over, when you use batting, you have to use a backing fabric. Otherwise you would get all that batting inside your feed dogs, and that's no good. But with this, it's so stable that you can sew things to the front of it, have this on your feed dogs, and there won't be any problem. And then later you can line it. So when I make tote bags, quite often I will do quilt as you go on this, and then line the bag the way I normally do. And by the way, I've got a class, I'll be teaching in the fall, something called MJ's Easy Tote. I know a lot of you have taken this class with me, but that's how I make very simple tote bags. And I oftentimes use Soft&Stable because the bags stand up by themselves when it's all done. It doesn't slouch into a little puddle on the floor. It stands up nicely, which I like that in my tote bags. All right, thank you for showing us how to use the bias tape maker. I had one several years, never pulled it out to try. It works like a charm. Yes, it does. Maybe you have it in your stash and you didn't know how to use it. Yes, you can refill these chalk markers. I'll be honest, I normally lose them before I need to refill them, but I did buy some chalk, and one time I did refill it. So you take out this little, well, I got to be careful here because chalk might go everywhere. But yes, there's the refill, and then you could use a tiny little funnel or something to put that in there. The powder comes in an envelope, so it's pretty easy to pour into that little hole. So it is refillable, so that if you don't lose it, it'll last forever. And now I can't get that back in. So I'm scared to put this down on the ground because, oh, there it is. Okay, got it. All right. Any other questions about everything I've talked about thus far? We are gonna, let me just check my list. Bodkin. I didn't talk about Wonder Clips, but I'm going to talk about Wonder Clips when I talk about the little bag. And then also, this also calls for Wonder Clips, which are very useful. If you've ever tried to pin multiple layers, especially a layer that has Soft&Stable, you will soon realize you need to have Wonder Clips, and happen to have one here, but we'll talk more about them later. So if you were to try to pin it, it would be tough to get the pins through and get everything to stay still. So the Wonder Clips hold. For years, I put off buying Wonder Clips. I think, oh, binder clips work just fine. I don't know why I need these fancy pink things or whatever color. But when somebody finally gave me a stash of them, and like, oh my gosh, those are kind of life-changing. So they come in multiple sizes. Those are all on my favorites page because they are awesome. Okay, so I think unless you have other questions, that's everything I wanted to say about the duffel bag. We're going to continue on. Put that back in my pocket where I know I can find it. We're going to talk about the quilt behind me. It is a pattern I wrote many years ago called Perky Pinwheels. And I made it for one of my nieces who was just born. And now she is just graduated from high school. So 18 years old, I made this pattern. I recently redid this pattern in new colors because I decided that the colors that I had I wanted something new. So what these are, can you see how, come down here, can you see how these are three-dimensional? I call them Perky Pinwheels because they are perky and they poke out. And I just kind of envisioned my niece Leah kind of laying on her tummy and playing with these. And of course they can't come out. They are very well sewn in. So it's kind of a fun play quilts. And then if we move on over to the border, oftentimes you would see antique quilts have the Prairie point binding, and I thought, well, I don't want a quilt where the binding is kind of sharp on your chin when you pull the quilt up to your chin. So I put the Prairie points in the border instead. And I'm going to take this quilt down and show you another one just like it, but in yellow. So excuse my back for a second here. Oops. All right, it pays to be 6 feet tall. So this again in yellow, same exact pattern with the three-dimensional Perky Pinwheels. I quilted it slightly different. We have a lady that comes to Project Linus who loves rulers, and we were talking rulers the other day, and she told me about this idea where you start, let's see, I started here and then used my straight ruler to sew on my free motion machine. And it's kind of like a spiral where you just keep making, you go off, instead of going straight down, I go off a little bit. I just kept going until it got really small. And then I just lifted up my foot and went to the next one, wherever it was. One thing I will tell you, and I say it in the pattern as well, you'll want to be sure that you nail down this seam right here, because the seam, if the pinwheel's going this way, the seam allowance is going this way. If you don't nail that down, then your pinwheel could accidentally flip up and then you wouldn't have a beautiful pinwheel anymore. So I just, I came up with this little design where I dipped down and went down here, and then I dipped up there, and then the same thing. So I did it in diagonal, and then I came back through here, dipped over here, crossed over, and then dipped over here. So very simple. Don't go anywhere. On the blue quilt, I'll just show you. Let's see. Here we go. Can you see the circles? There we go. So this circle, I used my circle ruler to sew that. And if you're like, how could she use a ruler to do a circle? These are called quilting rulers. They're not cutting rulers. They're free motion rulers. And what they give you is perfect designs. We'll go out. Perfect designs with free motion quilting. And if you're still confused, I'm going to be teaching a class in the fall called Quilting with Rulers, an introduction. And I'm going to show you how to do circles and straight lines with your free motion machine. Any machine can do it. You just have to have the right foot, and that the machine department, we can help you get the right foot for your machine. And then I will teach you how to do the ruler work. So it's just another way to put designs into your quilt without completely doing, free motion by hand. These lines, of course, I did it just out of my head, but I wanted to get a nice straight ruler, straight line. So that's why I used that. And that's all the ruler work. I try to put a little bit of ruler work in every quilt I make, just so I can practice my free motion ruler work. Thank you for the edge. I love it. So the patterns are available. They should be on my favorites page. Perky Pinwheels. Support a local designer and buy my pattern. I feel like there was something else. I have a little demo for you. That's what I wanted to do. So, and then we're finally going to get to what you've probably all been waiting for, is watching me make a bag in 6 minutes or 10 or whatever it's going to be. Okay, so here's our little demo. Yep. Oh, okay. So we're going to do an overhead. Very good. So what I'm going to make is this block here with a little cute little pinwheels that are 3-dimensional. And by the way, when you go to quilt this, do not take it to a long armor. They will not appreciate having to babysit their machine, because most long armors nowadays have a computerized and they just walk away, and you can't walk away because this might happen. So this has to be done, you know, with your hands there the entire time. Okay. So what is a prairie point, you ask? Thank you for asking. A prairie point is a square piece of fabric that has been folded once on the diagonal, twice on the diagonal, and there's my prairie point. It has a double fold here and a single fold here, and all my raw edges are here. Okay, so those raw edges are begging to be put into a seam. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take a square, and all the numbers, all the sizes are in the pattern, but we're going to take a square, and we're going to, you could either pin it down or baste it. And I'm going to tell you, I am a big fan of basting in this case, because the time it would take me to put a pin here and put a pin here, because if I just put one pin, you're going to end up with something like that. And the time it would take to put a pin here and put a pin here, I could have basted it with a 5.0 stitch. So just crank up your basting stitch and sew a whole bunch of these, you know, assembly line these puppies. I basted with a red stitch. You may or may not be able to see that. But once a bunch of those are basted, I take another square. Oh, there's one basted. There's my red thread, really big stitch. I basted it, and then I'm going to make a bunch of sandwiches. So I'm going to lay another piece of white right sides together, and I'm going to create a whole bunch of these sandwiches. So here's one, and here's another. All right. So you can press them all the same way. So the seam allowances goes one way, and the prairie point goes the other way. All right, I'm gonna do it this way. I'm gonna flip this. I'm gonna flip this like this way, because I want my prairie points to go this way. And now back to my basting stitch. I'm gonna baste down one here and one here. And by the way, you may have noticed, my prairie points don't come to the very center of the block. Why? Because that's a heck of a lot of sewing to get through. You know, it's a lot of seams. I don't want to do that. Plus, the eye just kind of turns it into a pinwheel, even though they're not all attached. All right, so I baste that, and here we go. Flip this over, and now I'm going to sew this down. Now, with any 4-patch, it's more important to have this. Well, that's not basted, so it's falling apart. But it's more important to have this center matched up and nested perfectly than it is to have your edges matched up. Because if your edges don't match up, you can kind of hide that in the next seam allowance. But if that 4-patch doesn't match up, it's never going to work. It's never going to look good. So those fell out. So, but you can imagine what that's going to look like. Those go there, baste it down, sew it down, open it up, and now you've got this puppy. One more thing. If it was going to look like, actually it was going to look like this, right? Because that's the way I laid them in. So you kind of have to force this one to go this way. So I flip it over and just kind of make my seam allowances go the way I want them to go. Kind of a little twirl going on there. So now I've got it. Again, if you don't quilt these seam allowances down, this little guy may somehow decide he wants to go that way. So you got to make sure you quilt those down. Not a big deal. Again, it's a very simple process. It just takes a little time and patience to get all the pieces and parts put together. So any questions about that? I'd love to hear those questions before we move on to my last demo. AQS in Daytona. Was that this year with the talking about AccuQuilt, or another year? I try not to ever miss that show. I don't think I have missed that show. I'll be missing Jacksonville this year. Jacksonville is a big show that has all 7 guilds in Jacksonville, and I'll be in Croatia this year. So I am sad about missing Jacksonville, because that's one of the highlights of my quilting world. Okay, the moment we've all been waiting for. Clear the decks here. I would like to talk about these super fast, I'm calling them crazy easy body bag, crossbody bag, crazy easy body bags, crossbody bags. Okay, so here we've got a couple samples here. This one, of course, is made with clear vinyl. Why on earth would I make a bag out of clear vinyl? If you're going to a live, like a theater event or an outdoor show or whatever, they are more and more asking for clear vinyl bags. A lot of times I just put my lipstick and my phone in my pocket, but if I have a few more things, then I'm now going to start carrying these. Why do I have this little paper in here? This is 20 gauge. I'm sorry. This one is 16 gauge. So I put that in there. It's the yellow paper. When you buy vinyl, clear vinyl from us, it comes with paper. And if it's yellow, that means it's 16 gauge. It's also labeled on the bolt. And this is 20 gauge. And I have to say, you really can't tell the difference. So just buy whatever is easiest to get. You may decide you like one better than the other, but they both act just about the same as far as I'm concerned. So that's one idea. Another idea is a faux leather / vinyl, and I embroidered it. And I have a quick little demo on how to embroider vinyl. I had never done it before, but I decided, okay, it's now or never. Let's try this out. So here's what I did. And probably a lot of you do a lot more embroidery than I do. Really, until I got my new machine, I was only embroidering labels for the backs of my quilts. And then there's so much embroidery going on around here. I started to get embroidery envy. So I decided I'm going to get a really nice machine and I'm going to start embroidering more fun things. So to embroider vinyl, you don't hoop the vinyl because you could leave not burn marks that aren't going to go away because the hoop is so tight. So instead, you hoop cutaway stabilizer. Here I was testing out my design and then I just scooted it over a little bit. And here's a little tip for you. Rather than cutting a piece of stabilizer the size of your hoop, you don't need that much, because if I'm just going to embroider here, I can cut this extra. That's an extra 3, 4, 5, 6 inches, however, that you can use for the next project. But if you cut a piece that you need to hoop, then you're wasting all that margin. So I just leave my piece big and I hoop the cutaway, and then we're going to do something called floating the vinyl. So all you have to do is get this in here, and for some reason I'm having trouble. There we go. Okay, so I think I've got my hoop on a little too tight. Anyway, I've hooped the cutaway, and now I'm going to use a product called 505. If you've been with me for a while, you know I love this for, I can't get the top off. I use it for basting my quilts. I used to talk about Selkie KK2000, which is still a great product. But for the same price, which is $19.99, I can probably do 3 times as many quilts. So I've kind of switched over to this, and it's a great product. The one problem I used to have, it no longer has, so they fixed it. You get to the end of you got to the end of the can, and you get these strings coming out of goop, and it was messy. But that doesn't happen anymore. So big fan, 505. There is 606. There's a 404. There's a 202, 303. That is not temporary adhesive for fabric. Those are other types of adhesive. So if you're doing quilting or embroidery and you need temporary adhesive, this is the one you want to get. This is the larger bottle. We also have the smaller bottle, but heck, if as many quilts as I do, I just get the bigger bottle, and it still takes me, a little while to use them. So I'm going to spray. If you're worried about the spray getting on the hoop, you can make yourself a little cover for the hoop so the spray doesn't get on the hoop. And I'm just got a little bit of spray. And then I put the vinyl on. And of course, I've probably cut my vinyl to the right size for the bag. So that way I know where to center my design, and I don't have to waste any vinyl, but I didn't do that. But I just wanted to show you a little bit about how we embroider that. So came up with the design, put it in my machine. And of course, you always test out a design to make sure the way you like it before you do the real one. So are there any questions that I might be able to answer about embroidery? I'm not an expert by any means. Yeah, Dragon Con went to a concert and they want a clear bag. So yeah, it's happening. So we've got lots of vinyl. I think we have more than just 20 and 16 gauge, but those 2 gauges are on my favorites page because that's what I used here. Okay, continuing on, a few more samples. This bag was made with decorator fabric. If you wanted to use a quilting cotton, I would probably quilt it, or at least have 2 layers with maybe some fusible web between them, because you want something a little more sturdy than just a single layer of quilting cotton. This is a decorator fabric, so it's a little thicker, but I wanted to turn it inside out. So I want to show you, if you're worried about your edges being all frayed, I took some twill tape and I went around the edges of that inside, so to just kind of keep it nice and clean around the edges. So that's an option as well. And then finally, my demo today is going to be on cork. So I'm going to show you this cute one made out of cork. Cork, if you haven't started using cork yet, is very, very sewable. I don't need a special foot. I don't need a special thread. The only thing about cork is you don't want to pin it, because those pins stay. And so what that, again, with the Wonder Clips, make it very handy to be able to sew with cork. And this is actually the cork I'll be using. I think we have a few more pieces of this cork available on my favorites page. And then I've got a whole bunch of fun vinyls and corks I wanted to show you. This is a very small sampling of what we got in the back room. So we've got the clear vinyl. And by the way, this is a fat quarter. You see it's smaller. And so the price, of course, is going to reflect the fact that you've got a fat quarter for $2.41. You can make like 4 bags out of that. Or $5.19. You can make twice as many bags. That's goes across the whole bolt, as opposed to halfway across the bolt. It's what, 18 inches, Gabriella? So it's half a yard. So this is a quarter of a yard, and this is a half a yard of fabric. And then just some really cute vinyls. This would be really good for embroidering on, because it's just plain. And then we've got a sign out front that says exotic faux vinyls, snake and alligator and crocodile. And to be honest, I didn't realize there was a difference between crocodile and alligator, but apparently there is. Got a shiny vinyl if you have to do shiny. And then this one has a little bit, I don't know, this is Champion. I don't know if that's a skin, it's supposed to be a faux skin of an animal or not. Gabriella, we don't know. And then, of course, cork. We've got the flamingos and these beautiful tropical leaves, and then larger tropical leaves. We have a ton of vinyl, and every once in a while they send us a whole new batch of all new designs, and each one is as cute as the next one. So I have a hard time choosing. So all of those can be used for this project. All right, I think I have. Yeah. Oh no, I haven't. I have one. I have another thing you can make it with. If you've ever made anything with selvages, I've talked about selvages a lot. This one is almost done. And the way I sew selvage projects is, here it is. I've got some backing fabric. This just happens to be a poly satin that I happen to have in my stash. And then I like it a little thicker, so I've got some batting, just really any old batting. Cotton batting would be best. And then you lay your selvages down. If you've never sewn with selvages, here's what you do. You lay them down and you sew them on top of each other. So this is the finished edge. It's a lot of these yellow ones for some reason have this hairy edge. I don't know why. But you lay it down so you are covering up the color, some of the color from the previous one. Of course, the thicker that color that you left when you were cutting off your selvages, the more color you're going to have. So you certainly don't want to cut your selvages down to what I call the quick, which is just white, because you want to have a little bit of color showing in your project. And I have enough selvages that people share with me that I have a bag of just yellow and a bag of just orange and so forth. So I pulled out my yellows to make this one. So I'm going to top stitch that down. That's how it works. You top stitch it down. And then once that's done, you can cut off the edges. I was working on this morning, so haven't cut off all my edges. And then you put the next one down, and you just keep going until you've gotten to the top. Okay, so there's some pretty Kaffe Fassett ones, and that's all you do. And when you flip it over, you can see all those sewing lines, and that's okay to have on the inside. That's not a problem. And then this one I finished and I serged the edges nice and clean, because again, maybe you don't want all those funky raw edges in the inside of your project. And so I serged the edges before I, of course, in the flat before I applied my zipper. I'm going to talk about a pocket in a minute. Once I do everything else, you'll understand a little bit more about how to put the pocket in. What zipper do you suggest for this bag? Okay, so now it's time to pull out your handout. And again, we're going to put up the link for the handout in case you joined us later on. But the handout looks like this. It's called Crazy Easy Crossbody Bag. It's a 2-page handout. And let's talk about what you need. First of all, so I'm going to ask you to start with a 7 by 17 inch piece. Once you make one and you understand the process, you can absolutely make them bigger or smaller as you need it. And what's nice is this tossed pattern. All the flamingos aren't pointing one direction, so I can cut it however I want to cut it, and they look great no matter what. So 7 by 17, that's number one. Follow along here. You also need a 9-inch zipper. Well, if you're listening carefully, you're Mary-Jeanine, my bag is only 7 inches wide. Why do I need a 9-inch zipper? And you're going to see why in a minute. It's really nice to have a few extra inches to play with, and I will show you why in a moment. And then finally, okay, I'm asking you for 1.5 yards. Well, I'm really tall, so I need, well, let me put this bag on. This is 1.5 yards of cording for me, and that's where I like my bag. So maybe cut, if you're shorter, which you probably are, make yours a little shorter, and then, make that 7 by 17, try everything out. It doesn't take very long. And then you're like, okay, I need it shorter, I need it narrower, I need it wider, and then you can start playing with sizes. But right now, I'm using 1.5, and for me, 1.5 is perfect. I don't have to cut it down, but you're probably going to want to cut it down a little bit, depending on how long you like your crossbody bags. I have an entire wardrobe of these, as you can imagine. And by the way, I forgot to say this, but I've been making this bag for years. And one day, I think I was watching Pat's video on her 6-step tote bag. I'm like, wait a minute, I've got a bag that probably is less than 6 steps. So I should call mine the 6-minute tote bag or crossbody bag. But for right now, we're going to call it the Crazy Easy tote bag, crossbody bag. Sorry. Okay, so a few optional items. If you want an inside pocket, we'll talk about that when I'm done with my demo. Wonder clips. They're necessary for vinyl and for cork because you don't want to put pinholes in. And then finally, fusible tape. You don't have to do fusible tape, but I've decided that I really like it for putting zippers on. So this is what the package looks like. We've only got a couple left. We will definitely get more in stock. Why do I want this particular one? I went through the whole Notions wall looking for fusible tapes that I could sew through. And this is the only one that washes away and you can sew through it. The rest of them will gum up your needles. So they're fine if you're not sewing through, but for heaven's sakes, we're sewers. So we kind of got to sew through it, maybe. So this is what it looks like. So it's sticky on one side, paper on the other, but that paper will come off. So that is WashAway tape. You can always wait until it comes in next week and get it then as well. Okay, so I've got everything I need. Let me pull out some, whoops, pardon me. Let me pull out some wonder clips, get all ready to go here, because I know that some of you are going to be timing me. How do I know this? I was telling Fran up at the machine department this morning, I'm going to make a 6-minute bag online live. And she's like, I'm going to time you. So, okay, here we go. Got my bag. I'm going to put my zipper in so I end up with something that's in the round, right? So how do I put the zipper in? And we probably can go to the other camera now. This is the front of my zipper. And so I'm going to put it right sides together with the bag. And I'm going to pull my zipper down for now. And there's the little metal thing. And I don't want to run over that. So I'm going to bring it about 1/2 inch down. Your mileage may vary. You may want to change it a little bit. This machine I'm using is the Janome M7, which is the latest one. But I love this machine because it's got something called an HP foot. And and plate, which means that it is going to be very precise, highly professional. I forget what HB stands for. I also just cranked up my stitch length. I think I'm going to do it to 3/0, only because this is cork, and the tighter your stitch, the more likely you are to eventually, you know, cut a hole through it with those tight stitching. So I open up the stitch a little bit, and that is perfectly fine. So it's got a thread cutter. Cut that. Okay, I'm going to sew these zipper 4 times. That's my first sew. And now I'm going to flip over the top. So I'm flipping the zipper to the back, and I'm going to top stitch that down. And this is really easy because it's in the flat, right? So what I'm doing is I'm watching really carefully that I feed it perfectly, so my zipper is not going to be crooked. So I'm looking at a place on the foot, and I'm folding the cork. You see how easy cork is to sew. You do not need a special foot, and you do not need a special needle to sew cork. So come on in and get some beautiful cork. It's not the cheapest thing you ever had, so practice on regular fabric, but it is gorgeous. All right, so you see I just closed my zipper because now I'm going to bring up the other end, and I want to line everything up. Here's where I could use Wonder clips, but I'm also want to show you how this tape works. So I could clip this across. And by the way, the Wonder clips are nice because they have a flat side and a round side. So if I'm sewing, I want that flat side to be by the closest to the machine. But I'm going to, I lost my I had some little scissors here, but that's okay. I think my fingers will work just fine. So I'm going to use this tape, and I'm going to use the tape to hold my zipper down. So again, it's optional, but I find that it just, yeah, that worked just fine. It works really nicely. So I just kind of finger press the tape down. You do not press it down. This is all finger pressing. And now I'm going to peel the tape away. And you can see that tape really well. Okay, so now I can bring my piece up. And again, I'm going to get these sides lined up and the top of the zipper lined up with the bag. The right side of the zippers lined up with the right side of the bag. And again, finger pressing is a wonderful thing. I'm going to throw in one Wonder clip here just in case. And now I'm going to open up my zipper because that makes life a lot easier. This is why it's nice to have a couple extra inches, because I can work in the flat. And if that zipper head was right here, it'd be really fussy and hard to do. So giving yourself a few extra inches of zipper makes all the difference. Oh, I gotta sew the zipper down first before I top stitch it. So I'm just checking my work here a little bit. So again, hit the gas. And I know it's in the right place because I taped it down. A lot of times when I'm putting zippers in, I use this fusible tape, because if you don't put zippers in a lot, the biggest thing for me is that zippers kind of slip out of alignment when you're not watching. It's very sneaky like that. But I find the tape really helps to hold things down. So again, I've got that extra 2 inches over there, and that makes life a lot easier. If I hit the gas, my foot will go down, and now I'm top stitching that down. And again, I'm paying attention to the edge of the cork is lined up with a line of kind of an invisible place on the foot that I'm paying attention to, kind of the middle of that right side of the foot, really. Your mileage may vary. Cut the thread. We're almost there, guys. Now I've got a zipper that works. Okay, now I'm ready to make a bag. We're going to go back to regular for just a minute here. So I want to talk about this, why I love this bag. Oftentimes the patterns ask us to put a zipper at the very top of our bag. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I struggle with the two ends, trying to make it look good. Even with the little tabs, sometimes I still have trouble. But if I were to make a bag that has a zipper just down a little bit from the top, this is down an inch, but really could be anything, it still gives me just about the same amount of inside, but life is a lot easier with this zipper on the front as opposed to the top. So that's the whole point of this project here, is that zipper is not in a hard place. So here it is. I've got a bracelet. I say in my pattern at the bottom of page 1, you should have a bracelet at this point. So I'm just going to fold my cork down just a little bit so it looks like this. And now let's insert our handle, the cord. The cord is going to go at the very top of the side. So it's going to get, and I'm just going to let it stick out a little bit because we've got lots of extra cord here. So I'm going to put a Wonder Clip right there to hold that down. And if you've ever made a purse before, you know the handles stay on the inside, and I probably should make sure that I don't have any, I want it to be flat. I don't want any twists in my handle. So now this other piece is going to go in on the other side. And I'm also going to just kind of eyeball it, make sure they're both about the same amount. And then I'm going to Wonder Clip that. Notice no pins. All right. And now we are going to sew both sides down, and we're done. Seriously, we're done. So all this kind of gets folded up. I'm just going to let it go for now because we're going to sew up one side. All right. So we can, Gabriella, we can get back to the other. Oh, there you go. And again, this is all lined up, and I'm going to hit the gas and go. And oh, here, haha, almost forgot to do this. We always know if you're going to make a bag, you've got to open that zipper a little bit, otherwise you won't be able to get in when you're done. So you see these two little tabs here. I'm going to make sure I go to the right of those tabs. I'm going to squish them in nice and tight. I could put a Wonder Clip there, but I think it'll be okay. At this point, I'm going to take out my Wonder Clip, and I'm going to go back and forth, a few times on that handle, just to be sure that handle isn't going to go anywhere when I go to wear my bag. So I came all the way down, back and forth a few times on the handle. We're going to flip this over. And of course, this is where my handle's got to be on the inside. I could sew it from the bottom or the top, but since I'm here, I'm going to sew it from the top. But take off my Wonder Clip because that handle's not going to go. That strap's not going to go anywhere. So foot down, and again, back and forth. And off I go. And I'm probably going to go back and forth here too, because I don't want my zipper to come out. And I'm just realizing now that I'm not going far enough to the left. So I'm going to do this all again. I want it to be even. And then back it up here. We are almost done, boys and girls. All right, cut the thread and we're done. At this point, I had a pair of $1 office scissors to be able to cut that extra off. Here we go. So because I went back and forth on that, it's messy, but it doesn't matter. I can go ahead and cut this off so it doesn't end up in my bag. But hopefully you understand now. Hopefully you understand now why it's nice to have that extra. You know, you need 7 inches. You could have 18. Go through your zipper stash and maybe find some zippers that need a use. And that would be great. So I'm gonna go ahead and open that. And then, yes, it's cork. It's a little hard to do, but it can be done. We can go back to the regular camera if you want. There we go. So the magic of television. Not really, because I really did make this whole thing right in front of you. That's how fast it was. Hello, Shirley from Lockport, Illinois. Yes, Judy, you're right. It's easy to put a zipper in with a serger. If you got a serger, you should use it. Great. Sheila, yes, a decorative zipper would be great because you could have the zipper stuff on the outside if you so desired. So good question, decorative stitcher. And then the other question was, could you use craft text? I don't see why not. You could use anything you wanted to for this bag. So the bag is done and the corners are popped out. You could also box your corners if you wanted to. That is definitely a possibility if you wanted to make it more three-dimensional. Yes, you could press this. You can press cork. I mean, not with the hottest iron, but you could press it if you wanted that flat. But I kind of like the rounded nature of that, but you could certainly press it. Keep asking questions. I have a couple more things I wanted to say about this. So I promised you I was going to talk about how to put a pocket in. So my version of a pocket, again, with on the handout, if you want to do a pocket, you cut a piece of fabric 7 by 12, fold it in half so it's 6 by 7, and then I pressed it in half. This is the right side out. It's actually the leftover from my duffel. Right side out, and then stitch across the top, and that gives that top of it a little bit of structure so it won't wrinkle too much on you. And now I'm going to take that pocket, and here's the inside of my pink selvages, and I'm going to lay it down here, hit it with a couple wonder clips, and basically just sew the sides. You know, like Mary-Jeanine, what about the bottom? Things are going to fall at the bottom. Yes, you're right. You could push this down a little bit, and I don't really care that my lipstick is going to end up in one pocket or the other. It's just a little bit of an organizational thing. But if you really care about the fact that your pocket has a bottom, that nothing's going to go out to the other side, then you could certainly sew that down or fuse it down or in some way make sure that bottom. But I've never done that. I just put this like this and then sew the sides. And now you've got a pocket on the inside of your bag. So when you flip this right side out, you can't tell you've got a pocket. I think a couple of my bags might have pockets. Not this one. Anyway, they're somewhere. This one's got a pocket. But anyway, that's another option. I'm sure you guys could come up with other ideas. You can make these, again, bigger or smaller as you want. You can go all kinds of directions. I hope everybody tries this because it's fast. Jill says she definitely would like the pattern. Thanks. So I'm not sure if you're asking about this pattern. It's free. Gabriella is going to put up the handout one more time. It's a link to the handout that you can print out for yourself. We're not charging for this. It's yours. Thank you, Amy. I think it's genius too, if I do say so myself. The bag is great for a beginner project, especially for kids. Yes. In fact, I was just asked to teach at a assisted living place down the street from my house. And I think this is one of the projects I'm going to suggest that they make because it's so fast. A video to go with Perky Pinwheels, I do not, but you know what? This show stays on the system forever and ever. You can go to YouTube and you can, we'll have a description of what's in it, and you can go to that, go to the middle and watch it again as many times as you would like. So, yes, you're welcome for the handout. It is good for cell phones. In fact, that's kind of the reason I came up with the size. You could probably get away with something a little bit smaller for your cell phone and a wallet and a lipstick, but I would suggest just starting with that size and then going a little smaller or bigger as needed. But yes, I recently made these for 2 friends who's had a crossbody bag, and they were dying. And so I had some really cool cork, and I made them each one the same, and they loved it, and it'll last a really long time. Okay, if there's no other questions, thank you so much for joining me. This went longer than I expected, but it was a lot of good information, if I do say so myself. Thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully, oh, I forgot to say, I will not be here in July. I'll be here in August. So please join me again in August for this Tips, Tools, and Techniques. Take care. Bye-bye.